We're now streaming live. I don't trust that. But if we are
live.
Okay, Uhuru, we're live. Uhuru. Okay, Zoom can be a little tricky sometimes with when you're actually live, so that's why I said that. But Uhuru, everyone, welcome to tonight's edition of the Reparations Study Group. This is Jesse Neville, the National Chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, speaking to you from St. Petersburg, Florida, and we are very honored to be joined by the Director of the Department of Agitation and Propaganda of the African People's Socialist Party, Director Akilé Anai. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru, Director Akilé, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, we're really honored to have you on our program tonight, and we really appreciate your leadership over Agitprop, and particularly for the purposes of this study, want to shout out your work leading the Burning Spear newspaper. It is a really powerful newspaper, and we are very honored to study it on this program every, what day is it now? We were doing it every Tuesday, but we are now switching to Wednesday night. So I want to start off with that announcement. If you're, no, we were doing it on Thursdays. I'm sorry. If you're sitting there wondering, why are they going on a night early? Well, this is the new time of the Reparations Study Group hosted by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is to accommodate some changes in scheduling that have occurred based on the amazing People's War strategy that Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela, and the African People's Socialist Party have set into motion in response to the colonial virus known as COVID-19. So we're really excited to have a special guest on our program tonight. And for those who are tuning in for the first time, this is the study hosted by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the organization of white people working under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party with the specific mission to go back into white society and win other white people like myself to stand in solidarity with African people and their struggle for national liberation, struggle for political and economic power over their own lives, and especially for white people to understand, for reparations, that white people owe reparations to African people. We have sat and continue to sit on the pedestal of the oppression of African people for hundreds of years, and there is not a single dime in the white community that is not drenched in the blood and stolen labor and resources of Africa and African people. So we hold these studies to really see the world through the eyes of the African working class, through the political theory, the revolutionary philosophy of African internationalism developed by Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. Not so that we can, win arguments better, which we will be able to as a result of these studies. We will be able to win every argument, no matter the topic. But that is not the main reason we do these studies. It is so that we are better armed to go out in the world and actually do the work. African internationalism is a theory of practice, and our unity of theory and practice is found in the struggle for reparations to African people that the Uhuru Solidarity Movement carries out every single day under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. So I just want to salute our chairman, Omali Yeshitela, as well as Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela. And I also want to give a shout out to Jackson Hollingsworth, who is the usual host of this program, who was not able to be on the program tonight, but we are confident that Jackson will be able to return next week. So I know Jackson is tuning in. Uhuru, Comrade Jackson, I just really want to salute you for your amazing work coordinating this study every single week. And I also want to shout out my direct leadership in the Uhuru movement, Chairwoman Penny Hess, who is the chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the first organization, the cadre organization that the chairman formed in 1976. And Penny Hess was there when that meeting happened, where the chairman formed APSC, and she's here now. She's the first white person who was ever able to hear the call of the African Revolution to join the African Revolution, and has made that her life's work ever since. So Uhuru to Chairwoman Penny. And now we want to turn to our very special guest, Director Akilé Anai, to read this study tonight. We're studying from page 14 of the March issue of the Burning Spear newspaper. on an article that was actually written by you. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Director Akilé.
Uhuru. Well, thank you so much, Jesse, and just really want to salute the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and appreciate these studies that happen, because I appreciate anybody who studies the Burning Spear newspaper, especially for the purposes that you said, and also want to join with saluting my leadership, Chairman Amalia Shatella, Deputy Chairwoman Anai Shatella. And this article, I think, is really timely, so I'm glad we're studying it right now, because this whole concept of the People's War really requires us now more than ever to embody what it means to be a propagandist. That has to be something that everybody who wants to be engaged in this war has to really take on. And this was actually the report that the Department of Agitation and Propaganda gave to the party's first 7th Congress plenary that happened in February, the beginning of February of this year. So it was a report that Agiprop gave to the party and our entire movement about the direction that Agiprop was headed, and a whole training on how to become an effective propagandist. So we're going to read a little bit of that. And I'm going to start in the middle of the article from the subhead where it says, expand spear distribution through resolution number 4. Resolution number 4 was put forward by Agiprop and adopted at the 7th Congress. The resolution was introduced to guarantee the expansion of spear distribution throughout the regions within the U.S. Resolution number 4 brings the task of spear distribution onto the ground versus the responsibility to make sure party members are adhering to their mandated spear sales, or that spear sales are increasing throughout the regions, resting solely on the shoulders of a few members in the spear's national headquarters. Distributing the spear is the responsibility of every member of our party. It has to be worked into the day-to-day schedules of each rank and file member. The sales requirement of 25 papers for probationary members and 100 for members in good standing per month is a low and achievable minimum. We're no longer just reminding people what their spear sales requirement is. We're enforcing it with the implementation of resolution number 4. The Spear Distribution Office introduced reporting tools to help our offices as well as regional leadership to keep track and hold accountable the party members within a region to sell the spear. It also pushes the regions to get the paper into stores and other institutions willing to carry it. Resolution number 4 will help to resolve a common issue raised regarding spear purchases. If there is a contradiction that may prevent an individual from purchasing their spears, the LPO, the local party organization, unit or regional committee that the individual belongs to should come together to collectivize spear selling efforts, making sure that each party member is adhering to their mandated amount of sales. The reporting system that should be used in the unit, LPO, and region should help the regions to keep track of spears sold, which means that no one falls through the cracks. If a party member is noticed not selling the spear, the committee to which that party member belongs will be able to sum up, assess, and resolve. We call this the no excuses approach. Resolution number 4 and the reporting requirements also encourage getting to know all of the spear distributors in your region, including mass distributors, to promote getting together and selling the paper in new areas, establish relationships, and build organization with the different forces throughout. This resolution calls for LPOs, units, and organizers to hold at least one spear study per month to study its contents among party members and mass forces, like what we're doing today. We know that this process is new to the party, and it has been difficult at times to win unity from leaders to carry this process out. But with consistency and continuous checkup, we can develop the culture of selling the spear. This is why the distribution office also conducts monthly meetings with all of the distributors, both party and mass forces, to review reports, set out the goals, offer feedback, and note suggestions coming from throughout the regions. All regional leaders and Agiprop reps on the regional committee are required to attend and submit a monthly report. And since resolution number 4 will be used to expand the presence of the spear throughout the regions and encouraging party members to approach brick and mortar stores and institutions within our communities, we will be pushing important branding materials such as signage and standalone racks. And that was all stuff that we presented at the party's plenary. So that is this section in particular, in resolution number 4, as mentioned, was introduced at the party's 7th Congress. And as stated in depth here, it was the resolution that was going to guarantee the expansion of distribution of the sphere, and it's attaching itself to the party's regional strategy that was developed by the chairman and introduced at the 7th Congress plenary. So it's especially important for sphere study that we're talking about today, because all of us can be involved in the process of expanding sphere distribution in our area, and helping to adhere to resolution number 4. And selling the sphere is, well, at the moment, with COVID-19 and stay-at-home orders, this is really a good practice of being able to study it. This is a perfect time to study the sphere. Call up your friends and do a phone call and study the sphere together, or tune into these reparations study group shows to be able to study this content as well. This is the perfect time to study it, though, and be a part of expanding the distribution of the sphere in your area, because it's the most important revolutionary newspaper and outreach tool that we have. So we'll go ahead and stop there. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. Thank you, Director Akilé. Really appreciate that. And just really salute you again, your leadership and the Burning Sphere newspaper. It's just an incredible publication. And this workshop, I was there, I had the honor to be there at the party's plenary. I remember you came out with the construction tape, sectioning off the stage, and all of the members of the Department of Agitprop were wearing construction worker hats to symbolize the new world under construction that the work of the African People's Socialist Party is making a reality every single day. So it was an amazing workshop, and this was a really, really powerful presentation that you gave. So we did want to ask you a few questions. So let's talk about agitation and propaganda. And I remember the first time I heard those words, I got pretty excited when I heard that the African People's Socialist Party has a department of agitation and propaganda. What does that mean?
So it is a really exciting term, agitation and propaganda. And for a long time, even propaganda has this like negative connotation to it. So some people assume that when they hear the word propaganda, that it's something that's bad. And there's good propaganda and there's bad propaganda. And of course, the party's Department of Agitation and Propaganda produces propaganda for the people, by the people. And agitation and propaganda is the information tool. It is, and specifically related to the party, it is, how we basically tell the story of the African People's Socialist Party, of the Uhuru movement, how we put out the line, our theory of African internationalism, how we promote our leadership, Chairman Amali Eshatella and the leaders of our party and our movement, how we, really take on this war of ideas and how we go about doing that. Like, what are the tools and instruments, the steps? How do we do that, waging this war of ideas, which is something that our party has coined in terms of, all of the ideas out there. You have to, realize that ideas, these things are not innocent and they don't come from nowhere, that everybody has a worldview. You have a worldview, whether you know it or not, whether you know what your worldview is, that you come into this world with the worldview, you're taught what that worldview is, and it's most likely a worldview that puts you working in the interest or siding with the ruling class, the parasitic capitalist system that has you siding with, the oppressors of the entire world. And that's a worldview that most of us walk around here not knowing that we have, and it's really not this innocent thing. And our responsibility in this department is to wage the war of ideas. It's to turn the backwards ideas that we've had in our heads growing up, that we've been forced to take in, that we've been force fed, whether it's been through schools, whether it's been even through our families, whether it's been at church, wherever it's gone, whether it's been in music and literature, anything, we've gotten these backwards ideas, and our department is responsible for not only unlearning these backwards ideas, but putting forward the correct ideas about what the world actually is, what we're looking at, what it's actually based on, which we know that the social system we live in today is built on came into existence on the enslavement and the enslavement of African people, the genocide of African people, and the theft of this land here in the U.S. and the theft of land and resources in Africa, the dispersal of African people all around the world, and just the requirement for people to be colonized and oppressed and working for the interests of the ruling class. That system that we live in today came into existence based on that reality. And it's our responsibility as a part of a revolutionary apparatus to totally overthrow that social system that we're looking at, to make a reality void of slavery and colonialism, of imperialism, parasitic capitalism. Make that vision the most desired vision, the most, the vision that people aspire to have, is a world free of all that stuff. And, is a world where African people are free, have control over our own resources, where, no people on the planet have to be oppressed, but the oppressor, and that's what our responsibility is. And it's a great title to a very great and massive department that really covers so much. But it's the ideas, it's the perception of our party, of our movement, it's our history, it's the story that we're telling right now, and it's the story that we'll tell for years to come when people, ask the question, how in the world did we get here? That's what Agitprop is. And it's about inspiring people to take the stance, to abandon everything that they know, to reject everything that they've heard, and go towards the future, go towards these, go towards the correct ideas, that lead them to different conclusions other than the ones that we're at now. So in summation, that's what it is. It's getting the people inspired, getting the people mobilized, informing the people, and, giving people this vision that the chairman has had for over 50 years, that he's been really fighting to make real in the world, that we're so close on the cusp of having today. That's what Agitprop's here for.
Oh, for real. Wow. Thank you. Really appreciate that. And, we understand from being under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party that one of the most important tools that we have, weapons, you might say, that we have in our arsenal, is the Burning Spear newspaper. And I know that there's been some really exciting developments in the past few weeks, or past few months, perhaps, regarding the archiving of the Spear's history. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, as well as the history of the Burning Spear newspaper. People can go now to burningspear.com, theburningspear.com, and read the Burning Spear. But there was a time when Chairman Omali Shatella, Omowale Kefing, and others would be up into the wee hours of the night laying out the spear. So it has a long, rich history, and I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit as well.
Oh man, well, trying to speak to that in like a minute or so. So don't worry, I got experience in this. But the history of the Burning Spear newspaper, it's totally incredible. It's a 51-year-old newspaper, first of all. It's the oldest institution of the African People's Socialist Party. And it's such an incredible feat that we've managed to keep it, in constant production, even up till today. Especially when we realize at certain times what it is how the severe attacks of the Black Liberation Movement came under, that this paper was able to continue running, sometimes with just the chairman on his own making it happen. And then other forces like Comrade, as you just mentioned, Comrade Omowale Kefing, just doing the actual manual labor and everything else that it took to produce the spear. And I can't even imagine what that's like now, because we have access to so much technology to make things happen. And I think it's hard now, but I can't even imagine what that was like. But so it was founded in 1968 by the chairman. And it actually predates the African People's Socialist Party. The party was founded in 1972. So the Burning Spear was telling the story of the Junta of Militant Organizations, or JOMO. It was, so 1968, and the first print edition came out in 1969. And we've been here ever since, producing the Burning Spear ever since. And what you just mentioned about Gainesville is true. We've we have this amazing archive, you know, where the history of the party is stored, and the Burning Spear, you know, its 51-year history was in our hands, but it wasn't in a way where people could access it. So there's so much about our party's positions, about so many things throughout history and the work of the chairman and the party, how we've intervened. You know, a lot of people, you know, today they have a lot of ideas that might seem new, or they do a lot of things that might seem never done before, but it's not true. In fact, it's most likely that the party has inspired them in some way, shape, or form. And, you know, we have the history to prove it, and we have to be able to provide it. We have to be able to say, well, the party did this. Well, if we want to do this, here's what we can learn from. Here's the example, because we've done this before. Here is the line. Here was our analysis at this time. And now we collaborated with the University of Florida in Gainesville. I'm really excited about this and just really appreciate this particular department, because they took on archiving the Burning Spear, all 51 years of it. And so now our history of the party and just all that stuff I just talked about can be accessed now. And if you go to their digital library, you can read so far back as 1969's first Burning Spear newspaper. So it's really exciting. And yeah, like I can't really convey the just all of the incredible history of this newspaper. But I just do want to say that it is so important as a tool of propaganda, as outreach, as communicating these ideas. And I hear so much that newspaper, and even during this period, because with COVID-19, a lot of even print journal is starting to, you know, this was their sign that they need to just officially move to digital and stop printing. Well, we're not doing that. We're continuing our printing, and we're you know, putting more on digital, but we're going to keep our print edition because the assumption is that people have access to the resources that are hoarded in the white community in terms of being able to access information, including information like African internationalist analysis. And that's not true. That's just simply not true for the African working class. So this newspaper will continue to be printed, and, you know, they might get crushed on that end. They might stop printing, but the Burning Spear lives, and it'll continue to. We're going to keep it burning. So yeah, but it's an incredible history. It's why people should just love getting it and wanting to, you know, spread it out, you know, spread it everywhere.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much. And yes, I totally unite that keeping the spear in print is so important, and that the Burning Spear newspaper, unlike the bourgeois newspapers, is on the ascendancy. And I don't know if you saw this, but I saw some humorous news recently that the Tampa Bay Times had to lay off 11 staff members.
Yes.
And, you know, the Tampa Bay Times, as we know here in St. Petersburg, is one of the most vicious opponents of the African community, just constantly printing slander and, you know, functioning as the voice of the white ruling class. And one of the things that I appreciated so much and still do, the first time I ever picked up a Burning Spear newspaper, I was like, wow, every single headline in here screams its bias on the side of the African working class. And you know, I wonder if we could talk about that for a second, because there's this idea, which you kind of inferred earlier, of like objective journalism, objective media. And we're supposed to believe that, you know, when we go to the NewYorkTimes.com or something like that, we're reading just the facts, when the fact is quite different. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about why the African People's Socialist Party's newspaper wears its bias so proudly on its sleeve, and how that differs from the bourgeois media.
Well, the bourgeois media wears its bias clearly on its sleeve. You know, it does a very good job of that. And I really appreciate, I think it was a presentation that Chairman did at, I think in Berkeley, California, talking about specifically this question of, and it was back in the 80s, and I can't remember the exact time, and I really hope I've gotten that location correct, but it was talking about specifically like the whole concept of non-biased journalism and how that's totally not true. And how, we know, most of us should know that, there's like the whole superstructure and how things, come into being. And so when you have a whole economic system that's founded on, like we said slavery and genocide, like that's where that system is derived, then everything else as a consequence of that system that exists is going to go to support that system. So everything. And especially when it comes to ideas and how ideas are communicated, like we said, in education institutions, and entertainment and music and art and whatever, and including in media. Everything is all that information that's being pumped out is going to support, the system that is, responsible for the growing poverty and war and devastation and murder and theft, everything that we hate on this planet that this system is responsible for. All of those entities, those institutions work to benefit that, to keep that in place, which means that there is no way that the media does not work to keep that in place. And that, it can pretend to report in the to be non-biased and all this kind of stuff, but it's absolutely incapable of doing that because it came into existence being biased in the first place, because it had to report to everybody in the world that, hey, this great thing is happening, this great thing called capitalism is happening, it's bustling, and it had to report on that. It had to be on the front lines. It had to be responsible for telling the people that the US is going to be successful in the Vietnam War, and we're winning here, or the Vietnamese, they're horrible, and we're here because they have to go, and all kinds of, like, that's what the media is reporting. That's what they're responsible for doing. There's no way that's not non-biased. And so it's just a total, like, so the chairman just clarified that so brilliantly, like so long ago, that that's just not true. It's not true that everything it's serving someone's interest, and the bourgeois media is serving the interest of the bourgeoisie, of the ruling class. And that means that the African working class has to have something in our own hands that represents our own interests, and that makes no bones about it. That makes it very clear. We work in the interests of the African working class. Our worldview, African internationalism, is a theory of the worldview of the African working class. So, and it's really important because if we're not going to do it, who else in the world is doing it, is going to do it? Who else is going to tell the story and the perspective of the African working class if they're not serving the interests of the African working class? Who is going to do that? So because the African People's Socialist Party is, it's an organization, the advanced attachment of the African working class, so recognizes that this whole system is going to come down as a consequence of the African working class seizing power over our own lives. That's where we have to serve. That's what we have to report on. And we have to, speak in those interests. And it's so interesting because I think it's more revealing now about journalism and its whole concept of being non-biased, being ridiculous. It's more evident now than I feel like it's ever been, especially in regards to like this whole, even the COVID situation has made it, because imperialism is in crisis. It doesn't know what to do. And you've seen this huge split, even how the media is reporting on things. You have one side of the media that's like panic inducing, frantic, and we're all going to die and Trump's going to kill us. And then you have the other side who's like, everything's fine. America's doing great. Trump is doing all that he can. It's just incredible. You see this fracture in the ruling class through the fracture of the bourgeois media. It's incredible, but that's non-biased. You have some entities that are reporting in favor of the Trump administration, and then entities that are not, that are clearly against him, that clearly have another agenda. And it's just ridiculous. But the chairman summed that up very, so long ago. And that's why we explicitly, are biased towards the interests of the African working class. We absolutely have to be.
Uhuru. That's great. Thank you so much for that response. And we as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, we take this newspaper that is biased on the side of the African working class and we take it into the white community. We sell this newspaper to other white people, just as the African People's Socialist Party and its mass organizations are going into the African community constantly. We have, our specific mission to go into the white community and expose white people to this worldview, which is not simply just an alternative perspective from the one we're used to, like, oh, well, I like to see different sides of things. No, there's this side, quote unquote, is the truth. This is seeing the world as it really is, as opposed to all of the nonsense that you just talked about that you can get from whether it's the so-called liberal media or the right-wing media or even leftist, progressive, Democracy Now! And those kinds of things. All of those espouse the class interests and worldview of white power in one form or another. And any newspaper that is biased on the side of the African working class, the most exploited and oppressed segment of the human population, is biased on the side of the people, all of the people who are struggling around the world. So this newspaper is for any of us who want to be part of humanity. This is our newspaper as well. This speaks to our interests. It speaks to our future, because the African Revolution is our revolution the moment that we embrace our responsibility to organize and fight for reparations to African people. So I just wanted to throw that in there, and I really appreciate everything that you said, Director Akilé. And I want to give some shout outs. You're on our program tonight, so that definitely draws some very powerful people in the audience. And I want to shout out the Undersecretary of the Unión del Barrio Mexican Liberation Organization, Benjamin Prado, is tuning in. Uhuru. And victory to the Mexican Revolution. And I also want to shout out President Kalambai Endanet of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. Uhuru. President Kalambai. And many other people are watching. I want to give special shout out to Diane Tournay. She's in Gainesville, longtime member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and longtime supporter of the Burning Spear in many different ways. So I just really want to salute Comrade Diane and everybody who's tuning in for this really important discussion that we're having on the Reparations Study Group with Director Akilé. I want to encourage you to send in your questions. If you ever had, we actually do have one question, which I will get to. We have a question from Kristen Forthen. Before I get to that, I wanted to kind of jump on something that you brought up just now, which is COVID-19. Let's talk about agitprop in the era of COVID-19 and the people's war, and what role the war of ideas plays in the people's war strategy that the African People's Socialist Party has set into motion in response to this imperialist crisis.
So, you mentioned in the beginning that Chairman Amale Shatella, just presented this brilliant strategy about the whole people's war. And this really has activated our movement in a way that it's just really incredible. So to talk about the agitprop front in particular, it is probably, and just like agitprop is characterized already as like the heartbeat of our party and our movement, this is really the time for that to go, like for that to mean, like for that to really go into effect, for it to actually function as the heartbeat to which everything else flows. Because one of the first things we have to do in terms of, winning the people's war is to, one, let people know that a war is happening, that there's a war that's going on. And that might not always be clear. And the chairman put forward this really brilliant analysis of the whole situation around COVID-19. And he made it very clear that this is just one manifestation of the imperialist crisis. And that, if it doesn't look like COVID-19, it looks like the police occupation in St. Petersburg, Florida, or it looks like neo-colonialism rife in occupied Azania, South Africa. And it looks like African people catching hell wherever it is that we are. And that even this whole thing about COVID-19, even the fact that it's a pandemic and it's this huge issue, is because of the effect that it's having on white people in particular, because disease, and illness runs havoc in wherever African people are. African people are dying from not just COVID-19, but from everything else that the U.S. government has used to wage biological warfare on African people. We've been dying, in the process of dying, because of this system. And what's happening now is white people are dying in massive numbers everywhere, and the U.S. economy is taking a huge hit, and and it's a hit that came as a consequence of what we believe to be an effort to cripple what was contending superpower in the world, being a threat to the U.S. Hegemonic power, which is China, the ever-growing China, that the U.S. launched its biological assault on China, and then then of course it knew in the wake that it was going to have some casualties, and that's what the U.S. government is dealing with right now. And it's just an analysis that, like, who else is saying that? And I mean, you hear lots of conspiracy theories about why this thing happened or where it came from. And you got the whole thing with the 5G, you got the whole thing with the bats, you got all this mess. And that's also the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie don't care about conspiracy theories. They encourage that. They want you to think all this other stuff, except for leading you to the conclusion that the US government is responsible for COVID-19, coronavirus, and it's responsible for every other issue that we see in this world, on this planet. The US government has got something to do with it. And of course, they have no interest in putting out that narrative. They have no interest in putting out that kind of analysis, because it means that then people start organizing around more than just curing COVID-19. They become busy in organizing to cure colonialism, to overthrow colonialism, and they don't want to move people in that direction. And we see, so because this whole thing, I mean, one, we know, we can say for sure that imperialism been on the decline. Obviously, we say it's in crisis, but we can say confidently it will never be the same again after this is over, after it's said and done. And it's because it's so clear on its face today that there's no way people can go back. You have people, people who were diehard capitalists just a month ago talking about socialism and entertaining the idea that maybe socialism ain't so bad. And, because of just how the capitalist system is totally incapable of solving this problem, and it has no intention to. I mean, even the leaders in the US they're not even being like fake about it. They're just saying, well, the economy is the most important thing, and we got to do what we can to keep it afloat. So it's just so clear. So more and more people are going to be coming to these conclusions that then we have to go to them to organize them to come to the correct conclusions, because we don't want them to be led to conspiracy theory. We want them to be led to revolutionary theory that's not going to just make them lose trust in the whole imperialist setup, but it causes them to actively organize against it. That's what we're trying to inspire, to motivate people to do. And we have to anticipate, because it's happening right now, but we have to anticipate that there are going to be droves and droves of people that are looking for the Uhuru movement, not even an organization like the Uhuru. They're going to be looking for the Uhuru movement, where we have the answers. And this people's war is the African revolution saying, we're not backing down to any imperialist imposed crisis, that we organize through it. We organize through it because we have a responsibility to get to the other side, because we've had to kick every other crisis out the way to get to where we are today. We have a responsibility to kick it. So agitation and propaganda has to, one, show the people's war in action, because we can be engaged in this people's war and we'll be the only ones to see it. The masses of people have to be able to see the African working class and the whole Africa response, African people being able to speak for ourselves again, for African people to be able to be self-governing and have our own institutions that can deal with this problem. That's what the world has to see. They have to be able to, they can't envision something they've never seen. So we have to show it, because we're doing it. We are doing this actual work. So that's what Agitprop has to do. We have to tell this story. We have to put out this line. We have to put out this theory. We have to get it out to the masses to go, this is what we're looking at. That when COVID-19 is all said and done, you're coming here, you want to overthrow colonialism. That's what you want to do. That's the core of the contradiction. That's the fundamental problem for everybody on the planet, is this issue right here. That's what we have to win. So we got to put this, so we're in the process of basically activating all of our fronts, uniting our entire movement around this people's war strategy, and, you know, just pumping out this information, and as much as we can, as fast as we can, as accurately as we can, because we anticipate lots of people are going to be coming for leadership in this period right now and after this thing is over. They're going to come to us, and it's going to be as a consequence of the kind of work that Agitprop is responsible for doing. Has to put out these ideas, has to let people know that we're here on the ground. It has to show all the work we've been doing thus far. And I'm just, you know, we've started to do that, and it's just going to intensify, you know, tenfold over this next period. And I'm just so excited because it's just incredible. Everything we're doing, it's going to be all on full display, and it's just, yeah, that's what Agitprop is doing, and we're ready. Taking it over. Crew.
Wow. Yes, that is so exciting. And yeah, the work of Agitprop was already amazing under your leadership before this COVID thing happened, and now it's just escalating and you know, becoming even deeper and more impactful. So I just really salute that, and I really appreciate the People's War strategy of the African People's Socialist Party. A lot of people do. People that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be paying attention right now, they're paying attention. Mm-hmm. And they see, I'm talking about people I know, even in my family, that the African People's Socialist Party is the voice of sanity right now. Like you watch Trump, and you have him one day he's saying, oh, everything's gonna be fine by Easter. And then the next day he's like, millions of people are gonna die. And then the next day he's like, you know, it's a different story every single day. And then you have all this slander against China. You know, I really appreciate what you said about that you hear all this stuff about China, and you hear it about 5G, and even that was sort of turned into an anti-China thing. And not, you know, making no mention of the fact that China did a lot more than the US has done to try to protect its people from the consequences of this outbreak. And what China does is always you know, characterized as this like authoritarian dictatorship and all this horrible kind of thing. And, you know, not even getting into a discussion about whether or not China is a communist country, because we have the African internationalist understanding that genuine communism is not possible until capitalism as a whole system is overthrown by the leadership of the African working class. So without even going into that, clearly, based on some principles of democratic centralism and other principles born out of a country that was literally forged through a communist revolution, China reacted totally differently to the COVID-19 crisis in a way that put its people first, even before the economy. Whereas you have the US government and Trump saying, you know, people need to suck it up and take one for the team. And if your granny dies, you know, well, hey, somebody's stock portfolio needed that, so whatever. And I just wanted to say that, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this at all, that I firmly believe that, you know, the statement that colonialism is the virus, Black power is the cure. I take that literally. Like, I think literally that today it's COVID-19, yesterday it was the AIDS epidemic, and before that in parts of Africa, it was Ebola. There's always some way that colonialism is expressing itself in the form of a horrendous epidemic, usually that affects African people. Right now, as you said, and as the chairman has summed up so brilliantly, right now it's this huge crisis because it's also affecting white people. But I think the pandemics, the epidemics, they're going to continue to rage on the planet Earth until this capitalist social system is put in its grave. Mm-hmm. And the only social force that can make that happen is the African Revolution. So I don't have any faith in the United States government to deal with this COVID-19 pandemic or the next pandemic that will inevitably happen unless this foul, disgusting social and economic system is placed 6 feet under as soon as possible. And that's why I love the African People's Socialist Party. And I'm so honored to be under the leadership of the party and to have a role, that we have a role as white people to extend this struggle into the oppressor nation. So Just really wanted to salute you, Director Akilé, and we do have a couple of questions. I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, but I wanted to give our listeners, because this is a study group, so you all are part of the group that are tuning in. You're part of the study group, so please participate, and we will read your questions. So here's a question from Kristen Forthen. I'm scrolling through trying to find it. I'm sorry. So she asked about how the newspapers get to the party in occupied Azania.
So at the moment, what we do is send the digital versions of the spear to occupied Azania, because based on, just the whole capitalist project, it makes it very difficult to even be able to communicate and get the materials that are necessary, resources, and all other issues that make that really difficult. And we do want to resolve how to get the print edition, to the comrades on the ground, and even to develop the capacity in some way to print it there. But right now, what happens is that they are sent digitally, and that they can print them and distribute them in that way. So that's how, and also just the burningspear.com, people are able to access the content no matter where you are in the world that way. So.
Uhuru. And Diane Tournay put in a comment that says, China knows the people are the economy. Very true. All right, so here's another question for you, Director Akilé, from our host, usual host of this program, Jackson Hollingsworth. Two questions, actually. There's a trend. People don't read or watch the news because it's, quote, depressing, and there's nothing you can do about it. The horrible things that are going on. Of course, that's not the view of the Uhuru movement. How does the media of the Uhuru movement give people hope? And another question from Jackson is, thank you for addressing how news and political writings always have a class interest. Can you also address how entertainment media has a class interest as well?
So those are two really great questions. And the first one, well, let me see. I should go to the second one first. Well, okay, the second one, what we were talking about just a moment in terms of the, how everything, every institution that exists today is based on the superstructure that we know exists based on the whole existence of the social system. We know where the social system, how it came into existence. And so everything from that system is supposed to go to support that social system, what's ever in existence. So because we're dealing with this situation of imperialism, colonialism, parasitic capitalism, every institution derived from that system is going to benefit that reality and to keep that in place. And that includes the entertainment industry. And this is a part of the war of ideas, because that's also a part of agitation and propaganda. This is a way, and I was mentioning that earlier, that people consume information. And, most of us, beyond like reading a newspaper or watching the news, we listen to music, we watch television, watch, different TV shows, cartoons, whatever. We, listen to the radio, just all these different places. We go to plays, go to movies, all this kind of stuff. The entertainment aspect of it, it's like all of it serves a class interest. If it's not, if it's not art that's being developed to support the revolution, if it's not revolutionary art, if it's not like if it comes at the expense of the people, which a lot of art, which usually a lot of entertainment does come at the expense of the people, then it's all to support the whole capitalist project. That's what it's there for. And you're sitting there, you're listening to this music, sometimes you do it, not even paying attention to what you're listening to, but that just becomes what becomes ingrained in your head, and what your your thought process, that's what you're thinking, what you believe in is what you hear in that music, and or what you see on that television. What inspires us to even do some of the stuff that we do, whether it's what we do to our bodies, what we go eat, whatever, it's like being defined by what we see on television, or what we're hearing on the radio, or whatever. It's being defined by all of these people, by all these quote unquote entertainers and artists and all this kind of stuff. And it's all it's all this information that we soak in, we really take in, and sometimes don't even do it consciously. And then, that ends up becoming how we see the world. And it's really, like I said, not this innocent thing. And it's not to say that every artist sets out to support the capitalist project and therefore that's why they're creating music, but that's what we have. We really don't. It's like we just come, we don't know. It's like sometimes we don't even know any better. We just come out doing that because that's what puts bread on the table, because that's what the entertainment industry wants. They want you to talk about this. They want you to sell this product. They want you to do this. So this is how you got to act. This is how you got to be. This is how you got to look, in order to even get any kind of resources or anything like that. So then you have to become that person that they want you to be. You got to do what they want you to do in order to make any kind of resources for yourself, in order to, become any kind of celebrity or whatever. They call it selling your soul or selling out. That's what you have to do in order to be successful within that industry. And we're saying that, a successful artist, an artist that we can support, that we want to get behind, is one that is going to promote the revolution, one that is going to inspire, change in this world, one that's going to condemn the social system, not support it, and one that's going to be a part of creating and painting the new vision that we want people to adopt for themselves of this new world. And so, and it's all around us all the time. Like you can't go anywhere without hearing music or anything, seeing what it is that you're seeing. You can't go anywhere without these visual aids to help you support parasitic capitalism. Like that's what they're there for. So it's really important. And actually, S.G. Lawesi, Kinshasa, who's the Secretary General of the African Socialist International, just wrote an article about called Parasites Burning, because it was this recent incident in Paris, where they're called Congo combatants, where Africans from the Congo have had this 10-year ban on any performers coming there to this specific area, any African performers coming there to perform, if they're not condemning, French imperialism, if they're not condemning what France is doing in Africa. Like they're like, you can't perform here. And one, like neo-colonial cultural worker came and tried to break the ban, and the people rose up. And that's the demand from the masses. It's like, you need to do something that represents us, that supports us in our interests, and that condemns this mess. Like, you're not saying anything about them. You're not saying anything about that and what's going on to African people. So it's really important that all kinds of cultural workers begin to take on the struggle of revolution and create art in that way. And just in terms of, like the whole news and turning on the news and feeling ultimate despair, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like it's hard to watch the news sometimes, and a lot of us do it because it's information that we need to be able to see and analyze and assess and all this kind of stuff. And so that's, one of the main reasons why I even continue to entertain it at all, because if I was looking for direction or leadership or hope, you would not find it on any of those television networks, on any of those news entities, any of those newspapers. You wouldn't find it. And I'm not necessarily even bothered by the fact that they're reporting on there's been this many deaths here and there's a bomb over there, because that's the reality. That's the reality of what's happening. We report on that stuff. We talk about that stuff. And it's important for us to talk about that stuff because we need to know what is happening in the world. But the difference between the bourgeois media and our media is that we're an African internationalist media, which means that African internationalists are in the process of creating a new world free of all the contradictions that we have to report on. We can say what the way forward is going to be. We can say what we're doing right now to make that happen. Not something that, change is gradual, or we can do in 10 or 20. No, we're doing this right now. We're working on this right now. And because it's the worldview of the African working class, and that we know that this system that's built at our expense can't sustain itself. It's not doing such a hot job right now. That we are creating that future. We're determining what it's going to look like, and that's what our media conveys. And that's why I encourage everybody to get their news from the Burning Spear, from the Black Power 96. You know, like I encourage you to get your information from Uhuru Movement Media because you won't feel despair. You'll feel charged, you'll feel informed, and you'll know exactly what you need to do following. We have closing slogans at the end of every article that either give you a link to tell you where to join, you know, like we're making calls to action in these articles, you know? So that's the difference. And because imperialism doesn't know how to convey a future. There is none. Can't say what the future is going to be. There is none under imperialism. It's just a sinking ship. And that's what they report. Basically, this thing is a sinking ship. It's going downhill. That's all they can say. They can't say what the future is going to be. So, of course, you watch it and feel despair. So, but not with the Uhuru Movement Media.
Yep. Uhuru, thank you, Director Akilé. And we have just about 2 minutes left. So I'm going to give you a big question. And I know you are an expert at answering big questions in a short amount of time based on your experience as a revolutionary political candidate and a magnificent propagandist as well. So here's a question from Akilé Achebe watching on YouTube who asks, what is the party's concept of reparations?
Well, reparations is, you know, the return of all the stolen wealth and resources that have been taken from African people to sustain what is now really the whole white world. It's the complete return of those resources. And, you know, there are all these ideas about reparations, what that is. And it's because of the African People's Socialist Party, by the way, that people are even engaging in this conversation about reparations and what that and entertaining it because it's an increasingly growing demand that African people, and it's also a demand that is, you know, really drawing out the side of the line that white people actually stand on. If you're for reparations or you're against reparations, because you have all these quote unquote white allies and the white people that love us that just cannot get behind the idea of African people, you know, being returned what has been stolen from us. They cannot get behind that. And so this whole question of reparations, and it's being defined on all these different levels by all these different people saying what reparations is. Some people say it's some type of welfare check, it's some type of child care program, it's this and it's that. And we're saying, no, we want the return of our stolen land, our resources, our labor, and everything that has value in the white world belongs to African people. We want it back. I want the shirt off your back. I want the food in your fridge. I want the gas in your car. I want it back. That's mine. It's mine. It's mine. It belongs to African people. That's what reparations, you know, looks like. It's a revolutionary demand because, you know, the ultimate form of reparations is the fall of this parasitic social system that came into existence based on theft of African resources. That's reparations.
Uhuru. Expect to see that answer in its own video clip to promote the Uhuru Solidarity Movement National Convention at which you will be speaking. We're very excited about that. Director Akilé will be speaking, as well as Chairman Amali Shatella, Deputy Chair Onizanea Shatella, Chairwoman Penny Hess, and so many other people that I don't have time to tell you about right now. So I'm going to leave it at that. I just want to thank you, Director Akilé, for this incredible interview. This was amazing. It was really awesome to have you on. Thank you again, Uhuru. Uhuru. And just want to salute the Burning Spear newspaper and the African People's Socialist Party. And we will be back on next Wednesday at 6 p.m. with the Reparations Study Group with Chairwoman Penny Hess live on the study with us to sum up the People's War Strategy and the reparations front. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement at uhurusolidarity.org. Register for our national convention, April 18th and 19th. That's going to be an online conference, and that's going to be through uhurusolidarity.org/register. Uhuru.
Uhuru.